Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to the Star Wars Unlimited Store Showdown at Game Kastle Austin. My name's Levi, and I've got my lovely co-host with me,
Jason.
How's it going, Jason?
I'm doing great, Levi. How are you?
I'm super well, man. I'm super jazzed. I've got a lot of iced coffee running through my veins.
Always necessary.
Oh, dude, it's super necessary, and I'm very, very excited to just watch a lot of really sweet Star Wars Unlimited gameplay today.
Yeah, definitely, dude. We got a lot of great players here in Austin, and I think we're gonna have some pretty good matches today.
Yeah, dude, the Austin community has been going extremely strong basically since set one, day one.
Hey, man, hit the ground running.
Yeah, dude, some of those first Austin pre-releases had, 40, 50, 60 people.
Definitely.
It's pretty crazy over here. And even with set two, I think things have wavered a little bit, as they kind of naturally have everywhere. It's that time of the year where folks start getting busy again.
There's that little set two lull. It happens with all the games, right?
Yeah, I think it's pretty natural. I mean, coming from, other games, I definitely know about that set two lull. I definitely know about that set two lull. But today's going to be super duper exciting. I think at the moment we have, 18 players registered at the Store Showdown, and it's going to be really, really sweet. We don't start, technically their pre-registration is in right now. Actual registration is going to kick off, if you're central like us, at 11 o'clock on the dot. So we've got a pretty significant chunk of time to just sit here and do a little bit of yapping.
Yeah, definitely. Which is what we'd be doing anyway.
That's true. That's true. Yes, we're doing some yapping, as they call it, a pre-show in the business. And really, Jason, I just kind of want to pick your brain about what do you expect to see? Because when I asked that, there's two layers to this question, right? Yeah. There's the known meta, right? The meta of the game as a whole, the meta that we've seen in, all these 1Ks and the Gen Con events and the SGCon events and all these things that have been going on, the very known stuff. And then there's also the thing that we bring as a unique perspective to the table, which is the local meta. Yeah. How do you think those two are going to fuse today?
I think we are going to see some meta decks. We're going to see some Sabine Green. We're going to see some Boba Yellow. I think there's definitely going to be that there. The people here do like to brew their own stuff, though, so we're going to get some blue. I think we're going to get some double blue. I'm going to fix it. Okay, I wouldn't be surprised to see a Ray Blue showing up here and there. Also going to be getting probably some good, decent aggro decks. Probably some, some Cunning Hero, Aggression aggro, that kind of stuff going on. One of them top aided, the Store Showdown that was last weekend, so I wouldn't at all be surprised to see that too.
Yeah, so that is a big thing here that we have as far to go from data-wise, is we did have a Store Showdown just last weekend. Yep. And it's really interesting because Austin, as far as the community around here, the local player base, not particularly known for playing aggro. This is a bit of an oddity of a city where you're going to really not encounter very much Sabine. And not even very much off the wall aggro. It's not even like we have stuff like, I don't know, IG-88 or whatever running around.
I've faced a few people playing, GI Red, probably might be the weirdest one.
The occasional Leia
like
too. Leia was real big back in
Leia.
set one for us, but really aggro significantly chilled down here. But Sabine did come out and win the showdown last weekend. Yeah. So as much as you can always take local meta into account, you also have to always factor in that, like, hey, despite what you see people playing, at Fun Weeklies every single weekend of your life, once the big prizes start hitting, once the showdowns and the PQs come around, people are going to bring out the real stuff. So Sabine did take that one, but there were some really interesting elements of last week. And I think one of the ones that I noticed as much, especially when it comes to talking about aggro, is TIE Phantoms were flying around last weekend, were they not?
Yes. They definitely love the TIE Phantoms around here, too. That's for sure. And it could be because they were expecting a lot of Kira Green, which is going to have some tough, the control deck's going to have a tough time, kind of dealing with the lurking TIE like that. So it could very well be that, expecting that blue, because there's a lot of blue here. So, lurking ties, I would not be shocked to see a lot of those lurking around again today.
Yeah, you can't talk about that card or that deck without just talking about, like, the interactions as a whole. And really, it's just all about Tarkin, right? It's all about Tarkin and those EXP tokens. Yep. And then it's interesting, though, because that's kind of how that deck started, was just, putting tokens on this thing that can't die might be pretty good. And then you see that deck really evolve, right? Triple Dark Raid was unveiled.
TDR is so sweet.
And people start putting together, the Reinforcement Walker combos. I've even seen people playing Moff Gideon variants of that deck with bringing out the Light Cruiser with Triple Dark Raid. And you can bring out the Snow Trooper Lieutenant and just blast them for 9 right away. It's crazy. And it just goes to show how big the ceiling on that card is, especially once you have a few elements, stuff like Lurking TIE Phantom, like the TIE Advanced. If you go into a red variant, you get the Ruthless Raiders. There's really a lot of stuff you can do with Triple Dark Raid. For sure. And I think that the Triple Dark Raid decks have really, really come back around here, because I've been seeing the Tarkin ones come back out in the limelight, putting those tokens on. And I've also seen the red boba variants of Triple Dark Raids come back too.
Yep.
Bringing in the Ruthless Raiders, bringing in the Fet's Fire Spray.
Yep.
There was quite a bit of that going down at the Showdown last week, and I was at a local just Wednesday this week, and there were 2 out of 12 of us. There were 2 Tarkins doing the TIE Phantom thing, and there was 1 boba doing the Triple Dark Raid deck. So I expected that's one that we could encounter pretty significantly today.
I would agree with you on that, because one of the strengths of that deck just in general is how well it can play into the space arena, because even so far set to with the game right now as it is, the space arenas can be really difficult for a lot of decks to deal with. The game is mostly won and lost on the ground arena. Yet when you now have these tools in set 2 like TDR and the rest of these things that can really put some serious strength into the space arena and cheat it in even early, that's a really tough thing for a lot of decks to handle.
And I think that's a pretty natural element of the game, right? That it's mostly won and lost in ground, because that's where all the leaders go.
Right.
For now.
Yeah.
For now. And I think that's a really spooky element that space decks can kind of bring to the table. And we really just haven't seen something be able to carry that as much until Lurking TIE Phantom. So it's interesting to think about, especially in terms of like contesting it. What would you say? Because I have an idea in my mind, but I want to pick your brain about it. What would you say is the deck or the leader or the color combination or whatever that is best equipped to actually fighting monospace decks? What deck can best protect themselves in that arena?
Well, honestly, the one that jumps to mind is Sabine Green. I mean, that's, those A-Wings can take out a Lurking TIE Phantom pretty quick, which might be one of the things that kind of led to the results we got at that Showdown last weekend as well. The Sabine Green could have been really positioned well against the yellow space type vehicle decks. And so I think that's definitely one right there. The blue decks are they can deal with it with the removal some. You've got your make and opening and things like that. But again, you got to get that removal in early, right before Tarkin can buff it, or you can get the Triple Dark Raid on the TIE Advance. Yeah, the windows are real small.
Oh, they're so slim.
Real small. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's interesting ground there for actually some sort of like green-blue heroism pile.
Could be.
Because there's a world where you can just start throwing in things like the Concord Dawn Interceptors, then into like the Bright Hopes, and doing a lot of juggling there, especially if you're maybe playing something like a Ray that can also buff them up with experience tokens.
Yeah, definitely.
Things can get really scary for those space decks really fast. Stuff like Home 1 can come down and do a lot of recursion there. Alternatively, Ruthless Raiders are really good at, obviously, the red boba decks.
It's just a crit card.
They're going to play them with Triple Dark Raid. But if you're trying to counter that strategy as well, even though you can't really put that 2 damage on a Lurking TIE Phantom, then doing like a Triple Dark Raid to like ping the TIE Advance for 2 and kill it, and then swing it to the Phantom next turn, as long as it doesn't have more than 2 tokens on it, like there's things that card can maneuver really well.
Yeah.
I also think that something like a blue solo deck that's playing a little more space heavy, maybe they're playing the Concord Dawn Interceptors as well, maybe they got a couple of redemptions in there, can really turn things around. I think there's a lot of options to fight the space decks. Main deck making openings as well can make a huge one. You talked about it earlier, but I think the big thing about that card is most of the time that card sits in sideboards to deal with like 7th Fleet Defenders and Crafty Smugglers, but Lurking TIE Phantom is a big one, and if it's big in your local meta, your main deck can make an opening.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, definitely, because it's useful for Boba, especially Boba Yellow. Ooh, so you can hit the 7th Fleet Defenders, you can hit the Crafty Smugglers, and the rest of that stuff. Oh yeah, those little dudes, they're always crafty and they're always around. So
they're always crafty. They're always crafty. They're always smuggling.
They're always smuggling. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So no, that's totally true. And the Lurking TIE, it's one of those rare cards that blanks Power of the Dark Side.
It is.
And
kind of Avenger.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Which is pretty big.
Yeah.
Those are 2 pretty big things to hit as far as a blue control deck's arsenal comes in, which is a really good segue to talk about what we see, I think, a whole lot of here, and that is blue control, right?
That is blue control, yes, absolutely. Yeah, so there's been a lot of Kira, Kira ECL floating around because it's such a strong deck. I played a lot of that in set 2. And it's just got answers to most everything. It's really good into an open field, which is what is the strength of it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's got things that it can answer aggro with. You can get some early high level enforcers down. Obviously, you get to power the dark side. You're really obviously, you're gearing into the Kira flip turn with the overwhelming barrage. To clear the board is kind of what you're looking for. And I don't know if there's been much Palp Blue. Palp Blue is really strong though.
Palp Blue I think is super strong. Palp Blue and Palp Green are really comparable in my mind right now. I think Palp Blue maybe struggles a little less against Sabine, although I think the matchup is pretty abysmal for both of them. I don't think it feels good either way, but that's kind of created a interesting triangle going on here when it just comes to that, like, rock paper scissors in general. You talk about there's not a lot of aggression, right? A lot of aggro in general around here. So you'd think it's a pretty free reign for Palpatine. So why is blue control good around here? Shouldn't Palpatine be eating those up? Well, sometimes Palpatine is the blue control. So you got a lot of elements working around there. But I think the only time you really don't feel great taking Kira to the field is if you just walk in and you just see like the two best Palpatine players in your locals hanging out, right? And you know what they're on. Are you going to bet on the Sabines taking them out? Are you going to bet on dodging them? You kind of have to have a plan, and you kind of have to decide. I guess you just sort of have to decide if you're going to take something that's polarizing in that aspect. Are you okay settling for I lose to this and I beat this and I just hope I dodge this?
Yeah, which is more and more as we get into the bigger events, that's the decisions that we're going to have to start making, right? You can't just hone in on your only local meta right there because BQs are coming up, right? So you're going to need a deck that can go into an open field and deal with that kind of stuff. Something I have noticed as well, like locally, is that there's been a lot of command villainy aggression. And I got to tell you, man, I've faced it so many times. That freaking Ruthless Raider is so hard to deal with,
It's brutal.
as a blue-green villain deck player. So, that's such a key card for that type of matchup right there. And especially Palp Red. Palp Red, sneaky good, man.
I think that red-green villainy is in a really, really unique position right now. I think if you build a more late-game focused red-green villainy deck, you can do a little bit of everything.
Definitely.
You can be aggressive early game just by putting things like Kylo silencers, 3 power 2 drops on the ground, punishing ones in your deck can make you really aggressive really early on.
TIE interceptors.
TIE interceptors, yeah, they can let you control space a ton. Ruthless Raider just comes in and presents an immediate problem for pretty much any control deck, especially if they're like, dude, playing Ruthless Raider against a 25 health point Kira base, it just feels absolutely disrespectful. Those are pretty big. And then if you have access to all of the great ramp cards because you're green and you're villainy, you got Super Leader Technician, you got all the busted stuff. You start ramping into things like your Vaders and your Mauls, your reinforcement walkers and your Palpatines, your Crate Dragons if you want to go that big, your Devastators, your Relentless if you want to go that big. I think green red villainy is in a really good spot. And that's not really a new development, right? Vader was a good deck in set 1. He doesn't feel as good anymore. I think Bosk is actually really positioned to take that red-green villainy color pile into something. But Bosk, lately, we've seen a lot more different Bosk. We've seen that blue Bosk running around. And you really can't talk about the blue Bosk right now without also talking about Kira and what it means for her. Do you feel like the blue Bosk deck is, or rather just like hard control like that, is sort of pushing Kira out when she's kind of trying to play this almost more mid-range, less control deck, kind of like how Krennic was in set 1?
Yeah, I think that is definitely a thing. I feel like a lot of the players who might gravitate toward the soft control, unit-based control type decks like Akira, they're going to be moving into that blue Bosk. I think there really is a demand for that type of hard control. I'm going to say unitless, but near unitless type of.
I mean, it's close, right?
Yeah, it's pretty close, yeah.
It's like, at least in the boss deck, it's like Avengers, Child Son, and Client.
Yeah.
Are those the only units?
Mostly,
basically.
Yeah.
Might play like a couple Crate Dragons, maybe?
I've
seen that.
Exactly. Yeah,
basically what, like, it's funny because I'm talking about how Bosk, I think, is in a good spot to take the red-green villainy Vader deck, but just swap the leaders. It's funny that you talk about that because that's what he did to the blue Vader deck. They literally just took the blue Vader deck and put Bosk on it. Bosk is just taking Vader's job nonstop.
Yeah, and there's that brief period there, I guess, toward the end of set 1 where blue Boba became a thing, right? So Boba kind of tried to sneak in there. And then when set 2 came out, we got access to Bosk and those sweet bounties, like top target to do that burst of of life gain and also the death mark.
If the death mark gets to draw 4, dude, it just feels over, man.
It ain't an easy thing to live with.
Oh
dude.
my god, yeah. It's like how if you felt like you were ever in a position where you had to let them draw with I Am Your Father.
Yep.
It's like that, but worse. And
you
don't
get a choice.
You don't get a choice in the matter. It's a pretty brutal one, man. I think the boss deck is really good, a really good position right now. And it's kind of creating this interesting thing where, like you said, Boba Blue is sort of circling back because how do you beat hard control? Hard control with cunning. Because hard control with cunning versus hard control is it's a non-game, right? The cunning hard control is going to have bounty hunter crews just have more vigilances than you, and they're going to have Bazines, so they don't have to bother paying for a 6-cost Spark of Rebellion to take your vigilance or your restock. Like it'll take a while to finish that game, but you're probably going to play that one singular game with them. And the hard control deck that doesn't have the yellow cards in it is probably losing there every time.
And if they're feeling really froggy, they might just throw a triple Dark Raid in on you with let's Cheater and Avenger in. How about that?
Honestly, yeah, I've definitely seen blue Bobas make those plays. It's very, very scary. So I think the hard control meta is it's in a really weird spot with all that going on right now. And I think it kind of leaves these almost more mid-rangey control decks like Palpatine and Kira kind of in a weird spot where they're like, I don't really want to go into that because you're just going to mill me out, but I also don't want to go into aggro all the time. I mean, Palp especially does it. Kira feels a little better into aggro, especially if you're not playing a 25 hit point base. I think Kira feels a lot more manageable there, but it's definitely leaving a lot of these guys just feeling like they're in a weird middle ground. And if you're really taking the hard control into account, it unfortunately probably means that, at least I as a player, I'd probably just circle back to blue Boba at that point.
That's a perfectly valid choice, definitely. You know, the blue Boba, I think it's got a lot of the tools, just like you mentioned, to handle this type of soft control mid-range stuff, and can still get out there and mix it up with the aggro when it needs to. You know, because you got the early deploy leader. You've got access to like most of the other tricks that you're going to have in like a Boba Green even or a Boba Yellow. You can kind of get some of that stuff going in there too if you want.
And like you can honestly get just as aggro sometimes, right? You put down a Childson at the right point in time, he walls them out and blasts them, Boba starts blasting, you drop the fire spray next turn, and like you can really, really knock some people up, man. So I think that deck still kind of does it all in a way. But of course, that's like a bit more of a larger scale picture. When it comes to a store showdown like this one, it's a little more local meta. No one plays hard control here. No, people play control, but not hard control. You know, I've been milled out like maybe 3 times in Austin. So I think we're probably going to see a little bit more of the Palp and Kira side of things.
I would definitely expect that. Palp Green probably, I wouldn't be shocked to see some of that stuff floating around.
We have a few pretty passionate Palpatine players. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Tarkin decks flying around or the TIE Phantom in general because we know that we have those really good Palpatine players. I think that the TIE Phantom decks are also very good against Kira. You pretty much just... Kira basically just has to, thanks for the follow, man. Kira pretty much just has to find a make an opening before it gets buffed up. And that's, otherwise it feels like the game gets out of control very fast.
Yeah, you're searching desperately for that Black Sun Starfighter, which, depending if you're only playing 2, man, that's a miserable time right there just to get smacked in the face constantly.
Yeah, it's not great. And they have, ways to deal with that, right? Like the deck has removal, it has overwhelming barrage. and a TIE Phantom with 6 tokens on it is the best barrage target ever, right? So there's a lot of elements there that keep it pretty rough for Kira. So I think that's a pretty good sleeper pick. And I think the success of that deck locally is mostly just going to come down to how smart our sideboards are today. Are we packing the Confiscates? Are we packing Traitoresses, right, to take those TIE Phantoms? Are the TIE Phantom players also packing their own upgrade hate to bust the Traitoress and take their Phantom back? You can't out-confiscate, though. That just, that also doesn't go super far, though, against just a token or 2. So it's, are they playing their own Confiscates to bust the Traitoresses that take their TIE Phantoms? There's a lot of interaction points there.
I think, mind games within mind games, for sure.
And, it's that heads-up level of thinking that's going to separate, the boy Tarkins from the men Tarkins. The Moff Tarkins from the Grand Moff Tarkins.
You're gonna be Tarkin, or you're gonna be Krennic in this equation,
Those aspirations, man, they get lodged in your throat.
Oh, they do, man.
Yeah, our local meta is a pretty spicy one, man. I'm really excited to see what our players are going to bring forth today.
Yeah. Now, there's one leader I don't think we mentioned yet that I would be really surprised if we don't see some here today.
What do we got?
Han Solo of either variety. I'm kind of thinking even old Han. I would be really. It's going to be sweet if somebody shows up with mono yellow Han.
Yeah, so let's talk about those, right? Let's get the easy one out of the way, and that's Solo, right? Young Han.
Yeah,
that deck is so solved, it's so strong, it's so versatile, it's also incredibly fun.
Yes.
That deck has all of the makings of a very attractive meta deck. It's got pretty good matchups across the board. You can input a lot of player skill into it, and it's just a blast to play. It's very popular here. We've seen pretty much the second that deck was, manifested and put into the limelight by Frank the Tank at Gen Con, it's really, really been popping over here. People love playing that deck a lot. Now, that deck, I don't want to say it struggles against control, but it's probably not its favorite matchup. I do think it does quite well against aggro, which we have a little less of here. So is it poised to take the local meta very well here? I'm not sure. Are a lot of people going to play it today just because it's a good deck in general and it's very fun? I think so.
I think so. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think we're definitely going to see some Han Blue. Like you said, it's a fun deck. You get to play the Jedi units. You get to you can bring in Luke Skywalker. You can do this kind of stuff, and you get a crate at the top end. Which can win you a lot of games.
A whole lot of games. You get to play Yoda, dude.
You get to play Yoda.
Your favorite
card. Man, absolutely.
Now, Big Papa Han, old Han, Mr. Set 1 Han, that guy's a bit of a different story. That guy was really popular around Austin in Set 1. The
Han Green.
The Han Green deck was it was a staple of the meta, and it was fun. It was very popular around here. Going into Set 2, that deck really fell off, and that leader really fell off until we kind of saw the rise of the yellow Han. And because like it won a big event, and then it won one of the Gen Con days, and it kind of got evolved on by that point as well. It got a little more aggro from there, and that deck is really good. And I came back from the weekend of Gen Con, because we were both at Gen Con working it. I know I came back that Gen Con weekend for a locals right after on a Sunday. And of the 16 people in the room, I want to say 4 or 5 of them were playing that deck because it just looked so fun and so cool. And then after that week, not a single soul played that deck because everyone played that deck and went, oh, this one's kind of hard.
Yeah.
That deck's really hard to play.
Sequencing matters.
Crazy. Sequencing matters, passing matters. It's a super responsive deck that also doesn't really... It's weird because it wants to be really proactive in some ways with the hand control, but it also really wants to be responsive when it has the bounces. So you kind of have to know when to pass, but that also almost always gives up the ghost on what you're doing. And then at the end of the day, the more prepared someone is for the tech DJ combo and the more capable they you have the hand disruption to try and stop them from getting rid of it, but if they just draw another answer, that deck really loses a lot of steam when it doesn't get that combo off. It's a bit of a feast or famine type of situation.
Yeah, I would agree with you completely. And I think you hit on something that's really important with that deck too. Is it's tough for it to really do its thing without telegraphing what it's doing. And so if you're facing an experienced player who understands the deck and knows what you're going for, it can be short circuited pretty easily.
Yeah, it's got a whole lot of interaction points.
Yes.
It's really good at controlling when it is allowed to, but that's probably not that's a passenger seat perspective, which is not where you want your control deck to ever feel like it's in. That deck is a prime example of it's got all of the tools that it needs. The way that it implements them right now, I think just has a ceiling when it comes to fighting experienced or inexperienced players.
Yeah, you can. I mean, it's got some different builds. You can lean into the more aggro type, right?
Yeah, the rebels, the fleet lieutenants, and all that jazz.
Exactly.
R2s and 3POs, Leias.
Yeah, totally. Or you can kind of go the other way, right? With the Spark of Rebellion, Kira type. I'm gonna, hand destruction type stuff, right? And it can go long. It's got some long game type stuff. You've always got, and you've got, like you mentioned, you've got all the powerful cards, right? You have access to Cunning. You've got the Cantina Bouncer, you've got Bodhi, you've got Falcons, both Falcons if you want them, right?
Both Falcons are really, between the Rebel package, Surprise Strikes, and Falcons, you have a lot of really aggressive options. I mean, if you're racing someone and you drop a Cunning, it's pretty much lights out for them. Cunning's a 10 to 15 damage swing in a race sometimes, which is just insane to think about. So those are all really good elements. If you get super grindy, you have all the good smuggle options. If you're against control, you have all of the hand control. I mean, God, dude, watching the double yellow Han go turn 1 Spark, turn 2 Bodhi, turn 3 Kira. Like, if they go that route, dude, it feels impossible to try and execute anything. Yeah. And then, like, even if it's 2 turns from now, you can easily fall prey to Tech DJ at that point because you just don't have any options left. And then that's where another aspect of playing against the deck comes in, where, like, if you really know how to resource, you can counter the deck, right? A lot of, like, ramp players will open up, you know, more than one piece of ramp and they'll resource one, right?
Yeah.
And then they'll get their ramp ripped and go, oh, skill issue.
Yeah, for sure it is. And I think this kind of thing that you just mentioned right there is probably one of the reasons we've seen Vader fall off a little in set 2.
Yeah.
Because he's a lot more vulnerable, right, to that type of thing than Bosk, you know, than a Bosk or a Boba, right, who can be like, okay, cool, you stole my ramp. I'm still deploying on 5, right? You're not going to get me out that much of that. Whereas with Vader, if you don't get that ramp, it's like... Oof.
The thing about Vader, right, is you want to find 2 pieces of ramp.
Yeah.
Vader with 1 piece of ramp is not that scary, especially against a faster deck. 2 pieces of ramp is a big difference. Bosk, though, you find 1 piece of ramp with Bosk, you flip on, you know, you resupply or whatever on turn 2, you flip Bosk on turn 3 and you barrage him, right? Like, that's the aggro cleanup. Whereas, like, if a red-green Vader is trying to, you know, ramp turn 2, barrage turn 3, well, they can't flip their leader yet, so their only target at that point is their turn 1 play, which is like, what, a Death Star Stormtrooper at best? Honestly, there's no way that thing is alive at this point anyway. No. Let's be real. Yeah. So like, it's probably some kind of a 2-drop that you're barraging for maybe like 4. Yeah. Maybe 5, you know? I don't know, you look like a Viper probe droid sitting around or something. Yeah. It's just not great, and it's not nearly on the level as flip a 4/6 leader and barrage him, you know? Yeah. That the general play line of, you know, green X villainy, ramp on turn 2, flip a 5-cost leader and barrage on turn 3. That's why green Boba's a good deck. Yep. I mean, it's one of the many reasons, but that play line, right, figuring that out so fast, either barraging him or ECL to steadfast in, you know, that's a bit of a different deck at that point. But, like, just that really powerful sequence of get a hard-hitting leader out on turn 3 by flipping it on, you know, 5, ramping on turn 2. Yeah. That's just a super bread and butter play pattern, and it's going to keep green villainy strong probably forever. Yeah. Unless, like, super laser technician ever gets hit or something like that. Yeah. And it's the same reason why Bosk finds that speed and that success. It's just really, really good stuff all around for that color palette.
Got another question for you.
Oh, yeah?
A Cad Bane deck.
Oh, dude, yeah, that's I love that deck.
Oh yeah, that's sweet.
I'm a true, honest to God, like tempo mid-range player, and that Cad Bane deck is so good at just tempoing you out of the board, like subconsciously. Yeah. That deck is so sweet.
It's a sneaky good leader ability, yeah.
It's a super sneaky good leader ability. It has so many good setup combos. If you can keep them to just that one unit on the board, which, you know, that's kind of where, like, the red Cad came figured out with Tarkin Town, is if you just always Tarkin Town their turn 1 play, turn 2 onwards, you keep them to 1 unit on the board, which just always leaves open the most successful Cloud Rider for 4 damage lines, Forlom for 5 damage lines, McClunky for 4 damage lines, killing 4 or 5 health things, as long as they only have 1 unit and they can't put that damage anywhere else. It's really good. And not many decks turn 2 onwards are trying to deploy like 2 things on a turn.
Yes.
Most decks, you know, and if you are, it's probably because you're playing, like, I don't know, maybe Sabine or something.
Yeah.
Thanks for the follow, man. Yeah. Maybe you're playing like a Sabine or something like that. And at that point, that's probably a bad matchup for you. I think that's a really rough matchup. And then, you know, the big weakness of that deck that is like the big weakness of that deck that I think a lot of people talk about is, well, you're a killing unit based deck. What happens when you go up against control? I mean, it's not the most wonderful thing in the world, but there's 3 Bazines in your deck and 3 McClunkies to bounce them to rip their hand up, and there's 3 freaking Ruthless Raiders in your deck, dude. You got to be able to figure out something there. You got to be able to figure out something there.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, Cloud Rider is a thing, McClunky is a thing. The Bazine McClunky loot, that's legit. You know, you can really hit control with that stuff.
It's one of the reasons we've seen the new evolution of Boba Green, the 30 hit point base Boba Green with the Crumbs and the McClunkies and the Bazines. Yeah. It hits control really, really, really well. I think that combo is super underrated. It's a piece of that Cad Red deck gets to play with. I don't think we have anyone like locally around here that's really passionate about that deck.
I haven't seen much. Yeah, I haven't.
I know we have a couple people who really like Cad Bane, but I haven't seen them play Cad Bane since the Red deck came to light.
Yeah, I've seen some Mono Cad. I think I've probably seen more of that than anything.
Mono Cad just falls into that same camp of are you just worse Mono Boba?
Right.
Which is what basically, I mean, that's what pretty much any cunning villainy leader struggles to deal with. I think like the Cad Red is cool because it does differentiate itself enough.
Yes.
Like it's still a weaker deck because Boba's just nuts, but it's definitely doing something more unique and different. Which definitely. Makes it feel more justified in playing. It's also just fun.
It feels like the most natural home to definitely.
So fun.
It feels like the most natural home for Java as well. When you watch it really go off and doing its thing right, and it can find those tricks, like when it can pull the McClunky, when it can pull the surprise strike, and then play like shoot first or McClunky for free, right? Then it feels really straight good. Broken. Yeah,
it's really good. Tutor and McClunky is good enough for a unit to do just straight up.
Yeah,
and then like you can just get to a point where you start putting like I don't know a hotshot blaster or a jetpack on Jabba, and he actually becomes like a problem.
And who doesn't want to put a jetpack on Jabba?
Dude,
right?
that jetpack is working overtime.
Oh,
bro.
It is. Yeah.
Holy cow, jetpack is struggling. Put old Jabba in there. Holy cow. Yeah, I think that deck is really cool. That's another really, really good rogue deck. We mentioned her a little bit early on, but I wouldn't expect it. I wouldn't be surprised, I should say, to see a Ray or two in the field. I've seen a little bit of mono blue Ray and a little bit of red Ray running around these last few days. Dude, the red Ray deck was so hyped, like leading up to release, and it got like it saw like no play after that. It's crazy.
Yeah, you're right. It had that kind of like you mentioned previously, just a little bit of an explosion there at the beginning, and then it just kind of tailed off. I mean, it's a thing.
I think the issue is people just realized that they could force throw and pillage better in a blue solo deck rather than a red Ray deck. I think is really what everyone just kind of figured out, and so because like that strategy hasn't gone anywhere. No. The red Ray deck is how we discovered pillage was a very good card, and that hasn't stopped. It's just moved into another deck. But I think Ray can still do things on other cards. I mean, we saw the yellow Ray top the big overseas event. That was just kind of like pseudo underworld, pseudo rebel, just like throwing weenies at him. I think you can probably achieve a pretty similar strategy in green. That would be sick as well. I think there's a lot of potential there with that leader.
Definitely, yeah. She's a strong leader for sure. I mean, you put Restore 3 on anything, I mean, that's going to be really good. And the fact that she can kind of really juice up your early game plays, right, is a really important thing. Because then you can start trading it maybe into some mid-game turn 2, turn 3 type plays, that your opponent is making, like with a moisture farmer or something, right?
If R2 gets to become a 3/6, it's pretty problematic. It's quite problematic. It's good. It's good. I think there's good stuff there. And then her counterpart, I should say. You think we're going to see any Kylos today? I like that deck a lot.
There's a little Kylo Yellow floating around. I have faced some of that at events here. It'd be sweet if we did.
I like Kylo Yellow a lot. I think that deck is underrated. I think it's really good at outracing Sabine, of all things.
It can,
It certainly can. And it can really just like catch people off guard,
Yes.
At this point, like as good as Sabine is, everyone knows when the Darksaber is coming, everyone knows when ECL Poe is coming, Timely Poe, ECL/Timely Wrecker. Like, when those things are coming all the time. And I mean, there's only so much you can do to play around those cards. They're very good cards. But sometimes you can, right? And we've seen deck builds evolve and change in order to counter those cards. Meanwhile, Kylo is just this crazy unknown entity, dude, that I think a lot of people are not ready for. They're not ready for these, big guys blast, and they're not ready for an arm to the teeth to come out, and then just, if they can sequence the Kylo flip right, get him, get the actions out of the way that could kill him, smuggle that hot shot, put the fallen lightsaber on him, dude, put the jetpack on him. Jetpack on Kylo is so good. It's good. It's good. That deck's got tricks.
Definitely, yeah. And when you're facing a deck, like, what are you going to do? Like, the deck can just basically dump its hand every turn, right? I mean, they can stop resourcing even at 4 sometimes.
Correct.
It's like, that's fast.
Yep. And then, when it comes to top end, dude, what do you need more than 3 Ruthless Raiders to finish the job, dude?
Hey, not much.
They finished the job. The job. Yeah, I think that deck is really good. I think the different green variants of Kylo are really good. I like the pop return builds a lot. They're probably a little too gimmicky for like hardcore play.
Yeah.
But I do think they're solid. Solid. He falls in that same camp as Rey. I think there's a lot of different colors, a lot of different builds that are probably just pretty good.
Yeah, I definitely. And to your point too, as well too, like, you might see some of these decks might seem kind of gimmicky and stuff, right? You may not want to be taking those into an open field, like 124 player like PQ or something like that. But when you're at these store showdowns and things, you get some reps in on a deck like that, man. You can catch people off guard.
Oh, dude, totally. No, there's tons of potential for leaders to come out of the woodworks like that. The prizing for today is pretty serious. There's boxes on the line for sure, past just the Showdown promo. So even if you're not a big, Lady Proxima simp, there's definitely some sweet things to be playing for today.
Those showcases got to come from somewhere, right?
That's true, dude. That's true, man. And at the end of the day, like, sure, they've fallen in price, but would you say no to more crate dragons and Pose?
No way, man.
I wouldn't. This card just
like all the Pose you want to give me, yeah.
That's what I'm saying, dude. That's what I'm saying. So I think we're gonna see a healthy mix today of some pretty casual and some pretty serious play coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah, I think so.